flex, don't stop. Quid pro quo, I need the best y'all got. Tryna make a dollar, flip it like it's vinyl. Tryna make a way. What's it worth to you if the price too high? Quid pro quo, I need the best y'all got. Give me your best. Don't say nothing less, cause I'm giving you 100. How you always leaving me with nothing? I'm not impressed. It's gonna take more than this, cause I'm giving you 100. And I don't even know if I can trust you for nothing.
Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Cynthia. Good morning, Anne-Marie. Good morning, Adam. Hope everybody is good this morning. And welcome to, welcome to Tuesday. Welcome to another beautiful day in the neighborhood. We are rocking and rolling. Hopefully this thing's going to pop up here. I'm not sure why we've lost connection. Hang on one second, y'all. We're having a little issue with our connection, I believe. Or maybe that's just my computer that's running a little crazy. Hang on, y'all. Let me refresh this screen. Sorry about that, y'all. A little technical difficulty this morning. I believe we have it now. Hopefully we're good to go. All right. Well, let's get rocking and rolling, man. Hopefully we are going to be joined this morning by folks in the Exit Realty Lake Country. The Collective. It's gonna be a long time before I get out of that habit. That's kind of like changing the Washington Redskins to the Washington football team. It's going to take a minute to get used to that one. Been that a long time. So, but we're joined by the Collective Nation, the DRG Collective Nation this morning. So welcome to Tuesday. Welcome to April the 11th. I think I'm right in saying that. I would be a terrible newscaster this morning. It is April the 11th. So welcome. I'm trying to get used to my new digs, y'all. Trying to get used to this new office and making sure that I have everything in the right spot and we're rocking and rolling the right way and that I'm comfortable and good to go. But I think we're getting closer. I've got to get some more stuff in here so it doesn't like I'm sitting in the room is not empty. I promise. There's stuff in here, but it looks like I'm sitting in an empty room. I was a little bit late this morning trying to figure out a background to put back here. So we got to figure that out too. So, but good morning, y'all. Good morning. I'm going to go ahead and get started because these Tuesday, Thursday calls that we're going to do from now on are going to be a little bit shorter. So instead of taking a whole 45 minutes, an hour, we're going to reduce these calls to a little bit. We want to make sure that we share really good information with you guys. Keep kind of that same energy, that same vibe, and then bring some people in from the outside because the nation really is a group of people who love us. We love them, and they support us. We support them. So we all try to do this thing together. So let's get rocking and rolling. I'm going to go ahead and do the introduction and then we'll get rolling. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday. My name is Aaron Dwyer. My wife, Christy Dwyer, and I are team leaders, coaches at DRG, which stands for Drive, Reach, Gain. The Collective. We are brokered by EXP. And we do this every single morning. We started this over a year ago with our agents just to stay in contact with our agents and give them some motivation, a little bit of love, a little bit of connection, a little bit of relationship. And we did that because we believe that us having some input into their morning would help them have a great morning, be a part of their morning routine. And if we could help our agents create a good morning, then we could obviously increase their chances of having fantastic days. And if we can string enough fantastic days together, we can have a really good life. So we'll just share some laughs, some love, some fun. We'll share some of our experiences, share some of the things going on in the real estate industry, share some things going on as far as our coaching platform. But welcome everybody in the DRG Collective Nation. DRG, by the way, stands for Drive, Reach, Gain, if I didn't mention that. And we'll go into some of that later on some of these Tuesday, Thursday calls. But we also have our agents from the Collective here with us this morning. So good morning. The drill is, if you're with us this morning, please let us know you're up and awake by saying good morning, and then your name will pop up. And if it doesn't pop up, I'll tell you you're an anonymous user. And if you're an anonymous user, please just follow up your good morning with good morning from and your name. And that way I know who we're talking to and I know who's up with us. So let's get rocking and rolling. This morning I want to talk about habits. I went back to some notes from Bill Pipes, and I think some of you on this call, if you're watching this with us live or you're watching this later in the day, because this is also going to be on YouTube Live later today, or it's on YouTube Live now. It's going to be on YouTube later today, posted. But some of you may remember me talking a few days ago, even yesterday, about Bill Pipes, and hopefully Coach Bill is going to be on with us next Thursday, the 20th. I'm still trying to get that all squared away. But he was really instrumental in Tom Ferry, and really instrumental in getting Tom Ferry up and rolling. And he and Tom Ferry were kind of right hand together. But he spoke in Cabo at Brent Gove's event, Cabo 23, at the One Big Fire event that we went to a couple of weeks ago. And he said some things that I'm going to kind of go through, and hopefully he's going to go through that on Thursday. But I want to start implementing some of that with you guys. And one of the things that he said, because if you're in real estate, if you're watching this and you're on the Nation, or if you're obviously our agent, you know that this real estate market's changing a little bit. This real estate market is starting to has changed a little bit since November of last year. And from what Coach Pipe said and some other things that we've seen in the market and with the numbers, it looks like we're on the rebound. And typically when people hear that you're in the real estate business, they're going to ask you, how's the market? When's it going to crash? When are prices going to come down? We were sitting at the Masters the other day, sitting there on the 14th tee, and there was a guy there from that Chicagoland area, so right there in the border of Illinois and Indiana. And of course, when he found out we were in real estate, that was the first thing that he said is, when's the market going to drop? When should I buy a house? When should I look at doing something? When's the market going to crash? And you do understand that if you're in the real estate business and you are around the real estate business, either mortgages or title or you're in real estate, you're hearing this from the public. Unfortunately, the public still watches the news. I don't know if I've watched the news in probably since November of last year. I probably haven't watched the news very much. So the news is not something that I'm really paying attention to. And I try to pay attention to numbers in industry and what we're doing. Good morning, Casey. What we're doing in the market. I'm trying to pay attention to that. And in that vein, we these people that we talk to in this business, who find out that we're in real estate, who want to find out when they can make a deal, when they can get a deal, when they can go buy a house, when the market's going to crash so they can go make some money. You've got to be in a great position to be able to have that conversation. You've got to be in a position to confidently express to them what, based on your facts, based on your numbers, based on what you're reading and studying, based on you being a professional, what the market's actually doing. So one of the things that Coach Pipes talked about is this market, and that this market has shifted since November. That November of last year, from a number standpoint, appeared to be the bottom. That appeared to be the bottom of the market was November of last year. So now that we're in April of 2023, this market is shifting the right way. This market is going the right direction. We're starting to see interest rates come down just a little bit. House prices in our market, especially in Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, we're in that place where everybody wants to be. We're in that place that everybody wants to live. So for us, our markets are fantastic. And so while we have seen prices maybe not necessarily be just so you know, the last 2 years have been insane. That's been an anomaly. The last 2 years are a flash in the pan. The last 2 years are not a normal real estate market. What we're starting to see now is that normal real estate market. We're starting to see a normalization. So here's the deal for you: is if you're in the real estate business, if you're in this industry, here's what you got to remember. You've got to manage your psychological state. You've got to manage your mental state. Today, the title of this was Habits, a behavior pattern acquired by frequent repetition or physiologic exposure that shows itself in regularity or increased facility of performance. An acquired mode of behavior that has become nearly or completely involuntary. That's the one. The first one's a little long. The second one's one we probably most recognize. A habit is an acquired mode of behavior that has become nearly or completely involuntary. The reason a habit and your psychological state are so important. The reason your habit and your psychological state are so intertwined and they're so closely related is because habits are a function of your subconscious trying to create less strain on your computer. Your habits are your subconscious trying to create these repeated involuntary things you don't have to think about so that you're not stressing your brain out so bad. Right now, my Mac is the fans blowing, right? It has so many things going on. I've got a camera, I've got another monitor, I've got a light, I've got a microphone. It's got its internal computer going on, and the fan's starting to blow. So the fan's going to try to cool it off. So I want you to think about this in your life. If I talk about managing your psychological state, if I talk about managing your mental state, if I talk about managing your emotional state for you individually, and also for the people that you're talking to, habits are closely intertwined with that. And here's why I'm bringing this up. Since I finished 75 hard on March the 16th, so about 3 weeks ago, I finished 75 hard. I tried to start doing phase one. I did phase one for about 3 days, and then crap kind of hit the fan. And I had a weekend where we were moving furniture and we were running around Tennessee to Georgia, Georgia to Tennessee, and just where my day completely got out of whack. And there was no way I could get all the things in. So I just stopped phase one completely. And I wasn't going to start it back because it just kept having to start over, And I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to be in a position where I knew I could start phase one in the next 30 days. I could knock this thing out. But I found myself, good morning, Caitlin. I found myself yesterday driving in the car, having a conversation with myself and said, this is exactly where you get to, where you begin to self-sabotage. And this is what I want you to wrap your mind around, because the self-sabotage and habits and your psychological state are all intertwined. They're all one and the same. They're all siblings from the same parent. I was driving out of our driveway. I stopped at the stop sign and I said, this is exactly where you get to when you begin to self-sabotage. When you come so far and you're on such high momentum and you're on such an incline and you're on such an increase that you start to coast, that you start to fall out of the good habits from 75 hard you created and start to roll back into the bad habits that you used to have. You start to roll back into not getting up at 4:45. You start to roll back into not drinking a gallon of water. You start to roll back into not doing your meditation every day. You start to roll back into not doing your affirmations every day. You start to roll back into not reading every day. I read 10 books in the first 3 months of the year, and I've read probably 17 pages since then. I want you to see if you recognize this. You start to make momentum. You start to, you get in this psychological state where you say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to do this differently. And it takes you a minute to start to create some new habits, and you start to move in a certain direction, and you get comfortable in moving in that direction. You get your feet under you. You start to feel like you're actually making some progress. You actually feel like you're starting to do something. You might get a deal under contract. You might have a couple of people looking at houses. You've got some great things going. And then all of a sudden, crap hits the fan. Either of your own doing, or because something on the outside of you that comes at you. And when that weekend happens where everything hits the fan and you're having to move from here to there and you're having to move from there to here and you got all these other things going on and the flat tire's flat and you got to go to the doctor. Now you got an abscessed tooth. You've got this happening and that happening and all these things. And you begin to fall out of the good habits that you created. Your psychological state starts to revert backwards. And then you go back to a place of comfort to what you've always known, which are your established thought patterns to keep your computer fan from starting to run. Does that make sense? We all have these habitual patterns of behavior. I'm 51 years old. I have habitual patterns of behavior that have kept me stuck in the same life, in the same thing, in the same mode of behavior, in the same money in my bank account, in the same kind of car I drive. All of that is a result of my habitual patterns of behavior. All of that as a result of my psychological state. And I can blame other people. I can blame things out there. I can say that it's because I don't have this information, or because I'm not in the right, I don't live in the right neighborhood, or I don't have the right person giving me advice, or I need this or I need that. When at the end of the day, it's us individually that are at the center of our solar system. And it's our psychological state, and it's our habit patterns, it's our behavior patterns that are creating the thing, the life, the reality that we see. Does that make sense to anybody? Does that resonate with you? Do you find yourself reverting back from a place of discomfort, trying to learn something new, to a place of comfort, to what you've always been doing? We're in this place where we've got to manage our psychological state. You're in this place. Bill Pipe said this the other day. You got to own your shit. You got to own your shit. You got to own the things that you do. You got to own the things that you don't do. You got to understand that it's those. I've talked about this before, and I'm going to just show you the power of a habit. If I were to tell you right now to go grab a shoe and tie your shoe, would you find yourself trying to sit here and think about, okay, what are the 4 steps I need to do? I need to stand up. I need to walk to the closet, and then I probably need to look through my shoes to figure out what shoe I want to put on. Then, of course, I need to make sure that I get the left one, because I don't like my right foot very much. The left foot's much more handsome. And then I need to make sure that my left shoe that I'm going to put on my left foot is not the right shoe. So I need to really, really look at that to make sure that I look at this. And then I'm going to need to untie it, or I need to make sure there's nothing in it, no spiders or anything. Do you do that? Or if I said, go put your shoes on, do you just walk in there, grab a shoe, put it on your foot, and tie it? If I asked Halson, go put your shoes on. It's at 8 months old, Halson's going to have a hard time going to put her shoes on. But that's the power of habit. If we didn't have habits, if we didn't have things that were repetitive, if we didn't have standards or patterns of behavior, if we didn't have an involuntary mode of behavior, if we didn't have that, we'd burn up our computer, because all the energy that it would take for our brain to go figure out how to put our shoes on, we'd never get anything done. But God, is part of his genius and our creation. He created this subconscious in here, this computer down way deep down inside, that creates these habits that are really beneficial for us, because they keep us from thinking about lots of things that happen in our lives, because our brains are flying all day long. But that same gear, that same tool, that same resource that allows us to not burn up our computers is the same tool, the same resource that allows us to get stuck, that creates the mud, the bog, that allows us to get stuck in the same life we've always had. It allows us to be stuck in the same income level that we've always had. It allows us to be stuck in the same belief patterns of ourselves, the same belief patterns of our ability. It creates a psychological state. It creates the personal reality and or your personality. That's the way Joe Dispenza talks about it. You'll hear Ed Milet talk about that. You'll hear Gary Brecka talk about that. You're going to hear these people who study the brain synapses and the brain plasticity and this neuroplasticity that you have. Your personal reality, your habits create your personal reality, which is in fact your personality. You've got to control your personal psychology. You've got to control your psychological state in this market right now, where the media is telling them are we in a recession? Sure we are. If you look at the indicators of a recession, are we in a recession? Sure we are. The market is hurting right now. Christy walked in from the store the other day. She goes, we put the groceries on the counter. She goes, guess how much I spent at the grocery store? And I said, $600. Because it wasn't much. It was a lot, but it wasn't much. And she said, it was over $500. Y'all, I took Zeke to Taco Bell yesterday after school. He got a quesadilla and a drink, and it was almost $8. Those little bitty things that we do all the time, we don't understand. A quesadilla and a Coke at Taco Bell 2 years ago was like $4. We're having this pressure, this monetary pressure put on us from everywhere. You've got to be in this business. You've got to manage your psychological state. You manage your psychological state by creating new habits. When I pulled out of the driveway the other day, the gear that I have right now is I understand my self-sabotage, because here's what happened, y'all. When your ego, when the thing that you've always done, when the way that you've always been starts to recognize that you're maybe doing something different, that there may be a different path, that there may be a different thing coming down the pike, that you may be trying something new, what will happen is your ego is going to jump up. That voice inside your head is going to jump up and say, whoa, hang on a second. This is change. Change is dangerous. Those are shadows over there, and you don't know what's in those shadows. So you might need to go back to some place you're really comfortable with. You might need to go back to some place that you're a lot safer in. Let's get out of the shadows and let's go to the light. And we've seen it happen in our company as we've transitioned from Exit Realty Lake Country into the Collective Broker by EXP, as we've transitioned our business and our company and our model and our mindset from an exit mindset to an EXP mindset. If we started to transition from the tools and resources of exit to the tools and resources of EXP, as we start to expand our company, expand our platforms, we have seen people say, whoa, I really liked this over here. I really liked how this felt. And if I walk into the shadows with y'all, if I walk into this unknown with y'all, there's a really big chance that there's bears and lions and tigers over there. And I don't want to fight bears and lions and tigers over there. So I like what you had over here. So I'm going to find something that most closely represents what we had, not where you are or not where we're going. And so the way some people say it is, hey, it's not you, it's me. I need something small. I need a little boutique brokerage. I need something small where I can talk to the broker all the time, where I can have communication with the broker all the time. I don't want the broker to be in Atlanta. I don't believe you're always going to be there, because apparently from us moving from here to there, we're disappearing into thin air, and we're not ever going to be involved with anybody anymore. And you're going to have to talk to somebody in some ivory tower somewhere that you've never been. I really don't understand. But that's the psychological state. And that's the psychological problem with habit, is because people will revert back to what's most comfortable. So when I pulled out of the driveway the other day and I recognized, Aaron, this is just self-sabotage. You're in the same spot that you've been in 100 times before, where you start to cook, where you start to go to these places, you start to meet these people, you start to create these relationships, you start to build these things, and then you fall back. You pull away from the relationship. You pull away from the effort. You revert back to your old habits. You revert back to not calling people. You revert back to not going to the gym. You revert back to sitting on the couch at 9 o'clock at night. You revert back to not getting up at 4:45. You get away from all the wonderful things you did to create this thing that you have now. And you revert back to what you've always known so that you'll be comfortable in what you've always had. Do you see the problem in that? Because what's over there, what's out here, is so much bigger than what's back there. Because guess what? What's back there doesn't change. The way it's always been is the way it's always going to be. The way it's always been, the way it looked then, it's not changing. It's always going to look that way. You're not going to be able to go back into your old habits. You're not going to be able to go back into the comfort of where you came from and change that. The promised land, the land of milk and honey, is out there. It's not back there. So when I recognize that I'm self-sabotaging, when I recognize that I'm doing the things that I used to do, that I start to feel myself going back. And really, honestly, y'all, it started with that weekend in Nashville moving furniture. It started with that weekend in Nashville where I started making the excuses. And I said, well, I'm just going to pull out of phase one because this is hard and this is hard. And it was stuff that had to be done. And it wasn't really a creation that our subconscious drives our reality. And that's the key to this. And as soon as I get out of the habit, as soon as I get out of this subconscious push, as soon as I get out of the concentration on where I'm going and I start to be comfortable where I am, I start to try to drift back to where I was because guess what? You are never stagnant. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. You're either progressing or you're regressing. You're either growing or you're dying. There is no standing still. So controlling your personal psychology has so much to do with the habits that you create. Getting up in the morning, look at our calls. We used to have 15, 20, 25 people on this call. And then people get tired of getting up early. They get tired of being up at 6:30. They get tired of doing things, and so they revert back. Then other things become more important. Then other things get in the way. Then they start to sleep in. They start to do other things. They start to feel, I don't feel like doing that anymore. And guess what life does? Life says, I get it. You don't want to get up early. You don't want to be on the call. Well, here's something to do. You don't want to be on the call. Well, here's a sickness that you can endure. You don't want to be on the call. Here's some furniture that you can go move today since you don't want to go to the gym. You don't want to go to the gym today? Perfect. I'll just cover up your weekends with this stuff. Great. You don't want to get in the habit of calling clients? Fantastic. Here's some mold. Here's an abscessed tooth you need to go to the dentist and take care of. Here's a cold that you can take care of. Do you understand that? That our subconscious drives our reality. Y'all, this is scientific. This is not something I'm making up. I promise you, go read some books on your subconscious and watch how your habits drive your behavior. I'm reading a book right now. So here's what I'm telling you right now. And this is the theme that I'm in. We're never going to have what we've never had unless we stop doing what we've always done. The only way to get to here is to get out of here. The only way to get to there is to leave here. The only way to have that is to stop doing this. Because if you could do this and have that, you would already have that. Does that make sense? What your dream and desire is, what your birthright is, what God has created you to be, what God has created you to have, what God has created you to create for others. That's your birthright. All the things you've been through, all the things you've endured, all the things you've been have been to get you to this place. And if you're on this call hearing the words that are coming out of my mouth, what is being said to you right now is you've got to look at your habits. I've got to look at my habits. I've got to change the way I think. I've got to change my behavior patterns. I've got to continue doing the things I did from January 1st, building those habit patterns, building those thought patterns, building those strength patterns. Because guess what? I truly believe, I believe this in my heart of hearts, to the core of my being, that all the things that started happening back in October created the conversations that we needed to have with the right people. That if the bad stuff that didn't happen in October would not have created the opportunity for the conversations in November and December. And if it weren't for the conversations in November and December, I probably wouldn't have started 75 Hard. But I knew something needed to change. And if it weren't for 75 Hard and me getting into that mindset and those habit patterns and that thought set, Christy would not have ended up in Alpharetta. I believe Christy ending up in Alpharetta, listening to John Maxwell, listening to Ed Milet, listening to those other speakers, opening the door and opening her heart to this next thing. So now I'm here. We're all a result of all the bad stuff that happened and our reaction to it. Because guess what? I could have sat there because my habitual behavior pattern is to when bad things happen to me and my family and the people I love and care about, I want to fight. That's my habit pattern. Is I want to fight. And I revert back to my ego. My ego says, you know what? Just go whip their ass. And I'm just being real with you. That's what my ego says. I've done that for most of my entire life. But that's not where I'm at. And plus, I'm 51 years old and getting punched in the face doesn't feel as good as it used to feel when it was 20. I don't enjoy getting punched in the face at 51 like I used to when I was 20. But that's my ego. But that's not beneficial, right? That's not helping. That's a very short-term, short-sighted, nearsighted solution to a really big problem. So I got to create new habitual patterns. I've got to create new thought patterns. I've got to create new things. But I very well could have stayed there in October, and we could have stayed right there, licked our wounds, stayed right there, cut everything away, stayed right there, kept the same thing, kept the same deal going. Could have done it. How many times do you do that? You try to make the best of a bad situation. You know the situation's bad. You feel more comfortable in the bad situation than you do in the new situation because the new situation's new and you don't know what's out there in the shadows, and there could be lions and tigers and bears out there. So you stay in the bad situation trying to make the bad better when all you do is stay in that same loop, that same cycle, making bad better, bad again, making it better. It's bad again. But if it weren't for the bad, we wouldn't understand the good. If it weren't for the good, we wouldn't understand the great. So I recognize my self-sabotage. I recognize when I start to fall back, I start to revert back. I start to go back to a place of comfort. I start to go back to a place to not push myself. I start to go back to a place where I'm not driving, where I'm not seeking truth, where I'm not seeking to be the best version of me. I fall back into this place of habitual behavior patterns. And I'm never going to get what I've never had unless I stop doing what I've always done. So here's what I want you to do today. Do you recognize a behavior pattern in you? Do you recognize a self-sabotage? Do you find yourself climbing, reaching, and then all of a sudden the tire goes flat? All of a sudden the battery dies in your car. All of a sudden you got to go to the doctor. All of a sudden you get sick. All of a sudden these bad things happen that start to take you farther and farther away from where you are. Anybody recognize that? I want you to think about these things. I want you to sit and consciously today, when we get done, take 5 minutes and think about the situations in your life. And I want you to think about the bad things that happen and then try to connect the dots to where you maybe fell into some self-sabotage, really fell into a bad psychological state. You really fell into feeling sorry for yourself, really feeling like, oh my gosh, nobody's helping me. Oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to happen. Oh my gosh, my husband's, all these things that you say. And I want you to connect the dots. We've got to be so conscious, not subconscious, but conscious of our psychological state. In this market, in this time where people are being inundated with bad information, when they're being inundated with information that tells them the housing market's going to crash, when they're being inundated with information that says to them that real estate's awful right now, you are being inundated with the market's terrible. There are no buyers, there are no sellers. It's so hard. It's so these things. You're hearing all this information. You got to manage your psychological state. You got to manage your habitual patterns. You got to manage what you're doing every single day. Every single day, you've got to manage that. This morning, got up early. This morning, I did my affirmations. This morning, I did my meditation. I recognize the self-sabotage, and now I'm doing something about it. So here's how you do this. You can take a bad habit and get rid of it. It may take 21 days. It's going to take about 3 weeks. But you've got to recognize where you're subconsciously going through the motions. You've got to recognize where you're just going through the motions and just doing things. You've got to consciously pay attention to, manage your psychological state, and pay attention to the things that you're doing. You've got to take an active role, a conscious active role in your behaviors and what you're doing. And I want you to do that today. If you're out there today and you watch this video, I want you to recognize when you finish watching this, take about a 5-minute window out of your day. 5 minutes is not going to kill you. Shut everything out for 5 minutes, shut the door, close your eyes. And for 5 minutes, I want you to think about the last couple of weeks, the last couple of months, and think about maybe the bad things that have happened and try to connect the dots from where that may have been created. Because as soon as you recognize, the recognition of a problem is the first step in getting rid of it. The recognition of a bad habit is the first step in eliminating that bad habit. The recognition of the issue is the first step into resolving the issue. So this morning, take those 5 minutes, do that thing. Because I want nothing but the absolute best for you. I want you to have your dreams and your desires. I want you to have that thing on your vision board where you look at it, where you wake up one day and you're driving to Augusta to go sit at the Masters, and you've been wanting this day for your entire life. And you're sitting there in a chair with the Masters logo on it, looking at the 13th green at Amen Corner, overlooking the 14th tee. You're hearing the roars of 15 and 16 behind you. You're watching these tour pros walk by. You're watching them hit their tee shots. And you're just sitting there smelling and looking and feeling what it is. And you realize, you take a minute to understand that this was the realization of an habitual thought pattern. This was a realization of a goal and a dream. That this was a realization that I'm sitting in that moment with little bit tears in my eyes, because I recognized this was the culmination of all those wants and all those thoughts and all those desires. That this was a manifestation of all those thoughts, all those wishes, and all those desires. Recognize your habits, recognize your self-sabotage, and then take a step to change it. Take a step to change it. Manage your psychological state. You got to be in the right headspace to help other people be in the right headspace. Your dreams and desires are out there waiting for you. They're out there. They're there. They're done. They're created. You just got to connect yourself to those. Good habits, good thoughts today. Good behavior patterns today, good thought patterns today, good habitual patterns today. Let's start to reframe, reshape our psychological state. Let's start to reframe and reshape our habit patterns. Let's start to reframe and reshape that involuntary response to things. Let's recognize that. Let's take control of that. And let's do it a little bit differently today. All right. Love y'all. Be good, be great, be you. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.